Welcome to this GiftWorks quick video. My name is Jonathan Lehman. This video is part of a video series on understanding how GiftWorks can be configured to work with QuickBooks. This particular video focuses on understanding how GiftWorks donors are matched to QuickBooks customers during the posting process. I'll overview the rules that are followed during the posting process when GiftWorks tries to match a donor with any existing customers in QuickBooks, and I'll review some common problems. Now, this is not an overview of accounting principles. Our expectation is that you would come with that knowledge, or if not, you would consult an accounting advisor. Let's begin by signing into GiftWorks. And I'm going to go to the settings area. I'm going to go to view transactions. And I'm going to show you that there's some transactions here ready to post. There's some for a donor called Jonathan Lehman, some for a gift for Steve and Vicky Faithful, and some pledges and a received payment for Acme. So if I go over here to the donor area, I want to show you what those donors are. We have Jonathan Lehman, who's a donor with no profile. And you can see he has some name and address information. If we edit this donor, you see that he has a first name of Jonathan, last name of Lehman. See his display name there. Acme is an organization profile. Typical setup of an organization profile where we have an organization name, which is in this case also the same as the display name, and then we have a donor with a household profile. Steve and Vicky Faithful is the display name. So there's three different types of profiles. So when we would post these transactions to QuickBooks, it's going to take these donors and it's going to try to find existing customers in QuickBooks that it can match to, that it can link up to, and associate this donor with that customer in QuickBooks. So if I open up my QuickBooks company file, you'll see that right now I have a donor, Steve and Vicky Faithful. I also have a Jonathan Lehman, I have a Mission Research. I don't have an Acme. So our expectation is that, just looking at this, is that we would probably add a customer called Acme. We would hope that our customer, Jonathan Lehman in GiftWorks, would match to this one, even though it's stored, it looks like it's stored slightly differently. This one's first space, last name. And GiftWorks is last comma first, and we would hope it would find Steve and Vicky Faithful. Well, how does it do that? What are the rules? Well, let me start by explaining that this is not an exact science. So it's very important that as much as possible, you keep your names within GiftWorks as unique as possible. QuickBooks requires that customer names are unique. So if you don't keep your donor names in GiftWorks as unique as possible, sometimes you can run into some problems there. So that's the first recommendation. Let's talk about the rules it actually uses to try to match the GiftWorks donors with the QuickBooks customers. During the configuration process, you're presented with a choice of how are your customer names formatted in QuickBooks. And if you want to understand more about that process of configuring GiftWorks to work with QuickBooks, we recommend you watch the video that talks about connecting GiftWorks and QuickBooks. When you get that particular choice, you have a choice of saying same as your GiftWorks donor display names, or first or last comma first. You have three choices. If you're saying same as your GiftWorks donor display names, you're basically saying that when you look at your QuickBooks customer names, in most cases they're fairly consistent, or they match up. In the majority of cases, they look like your customer names in GiftWorks. And so you're going to use that. It's going to actually use that name to try to match up to existing. It's going to use the GiftWorks donor display name to try to match up to existing customers in QuickBooks. And once it links that donor and that customer, from then on, it will at that point when it adds that customer or finds a match, it will always update the QuickBooks name to match the GiftWorks donor display name. If you choose first comma first, you say your names are. What you're basically saying is that it's going to follow a set of GiftWorks rules. And the first space last or last comma first really only applies to donors with no profiles, but you are saying by either of those choices that you're following this set of rules. You're basically saying that it's going to match based on donor profile. If it's a donor with no profile, it's going to try to match on first or last name if that donor has a first and last name. If not, the default is always to use the display name. If it's a donor with an organization profile and that donor has an organization name, it will use that name. Otherwise, it'll use the display name. And if it's a donor with a household profile, it will match on display name, similar to the option up here. So if it's a donor with no profile, that's where the first space last or last comma first comes into play. That means that once it matches up, once it searches and finds that donor, it will update that donor within that customer in QuickBooks to be in the format that you chose here, either first space last name or last comma first. It's important to know that QuickBooks will recognize names in different formats. So it considers Smith comma John or John space Smith. They'll recognize the same donor. So regardless of which one of these you choose and regardless of how it's formatted within GiftWorks, it can still find that match in QuickBooks. This is saying that ultimately how it will actually update that name within QuickBooks. So once these donors are linked, it will then update those names, continue to update those names based on the choice that you made. So if you would happen to change the name in GiftWorks and you end up posting transactions for that donor, it would update the name based on these choices also. So let's show you an example. Let's do the post. Remember, I have Steve and Vicky Faithful, and I had Jonathan Lehman. I don't have Acme. So let me go through my post process. I'll go to the settings area. I'll go to post donations. I'm going to pick my date range. We'll go through. This only applies to if you're posting transaction detail. And you can see here, here's the donors. So let's go through the process. Go through the post process. And finish. And you'll see that it successfully added Acme. There, and it brings over the name and address and phone number from GiftWorks. It found Steve and Vicky Faithful and it associated that donor in GiftWorks with this customer in QuickBooks and added the journal entry. It actually found Jonathan Lehman. You say, well, that was in a different format. Well, what it did is it first found it, updated the name and address, and phone number, and so forth. And then, since the choice that we made in our configuration was to say last comma first, it changed the name in QuickBooks, the customer name in QuickBooks, to be Lehman comma Jonathan. But it did add that journal entry. And now these three customers in QuickBooks are now linked up with those donors in GiftWorks. Any subsequent updates to those donors, when you post subsequently, it will change the names and the address within QuickBooks, the customers in QuickBooks. Let me show you some common problems or confusion. Here I'm going to post again just post again to the same Jonathan Lehman. And if we go over here and look at GiftWorks, the QuickBooks company file this time, you'll see that the customer I have in QuickBooks is Jonathan G. Lehman. Although they look the same, and you think that's probably the same donor, when I post from GiftWorks, go through the process, finish, I go over here. It's like, well, no, I didn't want it to create a new Jonathan Lehman. I wanted it to match that one. Well, that goes back to the explanation. Well, this is not an exact science. It does a fairly good job of matching up customers to donors. But in this case, because it was matching on the configuration is to match on first and last name, and so it's going to try to find Jonathan Lehman, and it doesn't recognize this Jonathan Lehman because it has the G in the initial. Our recommendation in that case, when that happens, is you can merge these two customers within QuickBooks. Here I have a dialog up to post again to show another common scenario. I'm going to post here, and the way it looks to me, I have some gifts from an Acme and gifts from Jonathan Lehman. I go to post, click next, and it goes through the validation, and it gets to this part, and it tells me that I have a duplicate name in the post. One of the donor names must be changed in GiftWorks. This happens when you have a duplicate name within GiftWorks. So if I click finish, I would go over here. I notice that I have two different Jonathan Lehmans. In this case, my configuration is to post by display name, so I know to match by display name in my configuration options. So I know I can just go in there and change one of these to make them unique. And I go back to my post process. Click next, next. And it posts successfully. Click finish. See, within GiftWorks, I have two different Jonathan Lehmans now with the appropriate journal entries. Here I'm showing you a post which shows another common scenario where I'm posting to a Jonathan Lehman, Jonathan G. Lehman, and I click next, and I select QuickBooks, and I go to Post, and I get this error. It tells me that the QuickBooks customer, Jonathan Lehman, cannot be renamed to the GiftWorks donor, Jonathan G. Lehman, because that name already exists as a customer. It tells me to rename the donor in GiftWorks. This could happen for a variety of reasons, but the point to understand is that customer, that donor in GiftWorks is associated with this customer, Jonathan Lehman, and is trying to rename it to Jonathan G. Lehman, which already exists in QuickBooks, and that cannot occur. So we would need to rename that customer in GiftWorks and repost. Another common posting scenario is I'm posting to Acme. They do not exist in the customer list, but they do exist in a vendor list within QuickBooks. Names can only need to be unique across all the lists in QuickBooks. So if I go to Post, it's going to tell me that it already exists in one of those other lists. So I can either change that name in the vendor list, or I can change the name in GiftWorks. We hope this video has been helpful, and we encourage you to watch the other videos as part of this video series.